First of all, hi everyone. This is my dark spot. I'm Brankica, and I have an exclusive honor of meeting guys from Meat Puppets. So, hi guys, how are you today?
Hi, I'm Derrick. This is Chris.
I know, but other people maybe not know.
Uh, well,
Yeah.
that's our fault, not yours.
Well, no, that's their fault. They weren't investigating too much. How are you guys today? What's the weather like in Arizona?
It's about to get close to 100. We're in the 90s now.
Oh,
Obviously, it's been raining like crazy in California, and we've been getting some of that. There's still snow up north, but here it's starting to get hot.
oh
Very
well, I
nice.
like hot. I like hot. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah,
I'm looking
great,
forward to it.
great, great. And tell me, I just wanted to start talking more about the beginnings of the band. I was watching some of your interviews and reading as well, and you mentioned, the Stooges as your inspiration. So I would like to talk more about that, if that's okay with you. In which way do you feel it affected your initial inspiration? If you can say more about it.
I'm sorry, boys. We can't hear. You can go outside and
Our
chat.
initial what? What did you say, Rakma?
Yeah, I just wanted to know about the Stooges inspiration. I think Derrick, you spoke about that in one of your interviews. So since I'm also a fan of Stooges, I would like more.
Oh, the Stooges, the
Yeah.
Iggy and the Stooges. Well, I was into punk rock back when the band started. Neither of the boys gave a damn about punk rock, but Kurt was punk rock curious. And since they had that great guitar playing on the Raw Power album, I was able to reel him in, and I loaned him my copy of Raw Power, and he went home and learned a bunch of the songs in a couple of days because it was child's play for him, and we jammed on them, and we realized that it was rocking. So we brought this guy over, and as I understand it, Kurt had to shame him into playing with us because he wasn't interested in playing with Bostrom, the toy drummer, and his crummy little punk rock. So he eventually talked Chris into coming, and he grudgingly joined our trio. Would you like to elaborate, Chris?
I think you covered that quite well. The Stooges, yeah. The Derek had a bunch of punk rock singles when we first met him. He was into the single scene that existed back then, and it was kind of an eye opener to realize that people could make their own records. Coming out. This was the late 70s that we're talking about.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and he turned me on to a bunch of different kinds of stuff that I had heard of somewhat, but hadn't really actually heard, including like that I Gotta Write and Give Me Some Skin 7-inch with James Williamson on guitar, that Stooges record, and all sorts of other different things, and it was just it was a different time musically. So much of the stuff that was commercially successful was so unattainable in a way, and we live in Phoenix, which is out in the desert, out, it's a kind of a,
Isolated.
an
Yeah.
isolated sort of environment, and it certainly didn't seem possible to do anything other than, sit out here and vegetate. And
So in
Yeah.
other words, while you weren't really crazy about the punk rock so much, you did like the DIY element,
yeah,
and
and
that
I
was
then I grew to really enjoy some of the music. It was just, I was always open to all sorts of different kinds of music, and Derek had enough of a background in it and had cool enough taste to be able to turn it, not only myself but my brother Kurt as well, onto a bunch of different kinds of things,
and they to me.
and then the influence kind of went back the other way, but a little less,
Yeah.
a little more these days, really.
Yeah, I wish music nowadays is more like, the Stooges were before that raw energy, like, crazy, so driving. And not, I mean, I wasn't really surprised that it affected you so much, and inspired you. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the thing about the Stooges, of course, is I was really into like Sex Pistols, Clash, all that
Yeah.
crap. And the Stooges were, since they still had that one foot in like old school rock and roll, they
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
a good place for us to start. Although it turns out the original Stooges were like a freeform noise organization that didn't play rock music at all. And
Yeah.
that's more like where we're at today, is playing
Yeah.
noise.
You
Yeah.
know, a neat thing happened a few years later. We had started playing together, the three of us. Then we decided to call ourselves Meat Puppets, named after one of the songs that Kurt had written. And we made some records, and then we started touring, and we were in Michigan.
That was like 82 or something like that.
Something like that.
We were in Ann Arbor.
We were in Ann Arbor, and after the show, some guys came up and we realized, oh my God, it was the Ashton brothers.
Yeah.
And
we went and stayed at
Ron and Scott Ashton
at Ron's house.
And they said, you guys want to come over and hang out? And we actually went over and hung out with those guys, and it was just like, wow.
And they had the band Destroy All Monsters, and they had a singer, Niagara, who was Ron's girlfriend. And after not too long of partying with them, we realized Ron's a little possessive of his girlfriend, and she's kind of interested in getting to know our guitar player a little better. Maybe we'd better be careful, because maybe these guys might be armed. They're really into Nazism.
Oh, well, I'm not really into that. And I believe a lot of people I know. Yeah. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you about that. I believe the scene was crazy back then, because you were talking also about all those shows, and the audience went crazy. It wasn't, I believe, like a, regular mosh pit. It was really fucking disrespectful. I must say that, because I believe you had a lot of issues with them back then. How was it like, if you can remember, those days?
Well, one of the things we brought to our punk rock experience, was psychedelic drugs. So we would like to get on stage, both on and influenced by psychedelic drugs. So sometimes we had a little trouble respecting each other's personal space on stage, and we definitely encourage that in our audience. But once we started hanging out with the jocks, the hardcore kids, the skinheads, and found that they liked violence a little bit more aggressively, we decided we didn't like that quite as well. You speak. I'll be right back, Chris.
Yeah.
Well, the thing about the punk rock scene that was so neat back then was that it was like its own little art scene. It was actually underground,
Yeah.
It was beneath the constraints of any sort of, commercial aspirations. So there were a lot of different styles and flavors that all fit under this umbrella of punk rock, right? And we never like clung to any one particular kind, but you didn't need to back then. And because of our wide-ranging taste, we were able to play shows with hardcore bands, or artier kind of bands and whatnot. Just it was a really neat kind of scene at the time. And occasionally, we'd get the we'd play shows with real like hardcore bands, and there'd be real aggressive audiences, and it'd be fun, be kind of nutty. And in that it was so underground, occasionally, the cops would come and stuff like that. The police would show up. There's so many, nutty things that went on at the time now. So
yeah, what about that show? I mean, I think you also mentioned the shows with Misfits and I think Black Flag, and they got really violent. And what happened actually back then? Like the audience was really crazy, right?
I don't think that Black Flag wasn't playing on that show. It was that one particular night we were playing with the Misfits at the old Fillmore in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And the crowd was very opinionated. We played our set. I remember we started our set off with the theme song from The King and I, the movie The King and I.
Yeah.
It's a lovely theme. Da 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 da. We did a little instrumental thing of that, and just having doing what we like to do. And there was a lot of stuff getting thrown. I remember there were a lot of beer cans and things being thrown, all sorts of stuff, and that would happen. There was a lot of spitting that would take place back then. People would express themselves kind of
Yeah.
colorfully. And we were somewhat used to it and would, do our thing. And, it was just dependent upon the moment. But then the Misfits got on, and it was back when they had the brothers playing and on guitar and bass. And at one point, the guitar player belted one of the people in the audience with his guitar, and it
Oh,
was pretty insane because he busted his guitar over this kid's head. So
oh. It was crazy, probably. I mean, yeah, those shows are really dangerous. I mean, a lot of people can get hurt, and it's like a lot of damage in general, you know. And
yeah,
tell me about like, I mean, I have seen some documentary with germs. You remember probably some of you. Did you ever see some of those shows with them? You know, earlier back then, they were on the scene back then at that time, even a bit earlier, if I believe, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Earlier, no, never actually saw the Germs, but Don Bowles, the drummer from the Germs, was
yeah,
from Phoenix originally.
yeah,
So
yeah,
he's one of the guys that there was a band called the Consumers that started in Phoenix before we did, like 77. And there
yeah.
was a band called the Exterminators and the Feeders. There was a Phoenix scene, and the Consumers moved out to Los Angeles, and Don Bowles moved out there with him, and he became the drummer of the Germs. So eventually the Germs happened, and then Darby decided to, take himself out, and
Yeah.
Don started a band called 45 Grave. And the very first show that we ever played in Los Angeles was with 45 Grave. So because of the
Oh,
Phoenix connection and because people we knew
yeah,
through that Derrick knew from being such a sociable guy and
yeah.
making contacts with people.
I
So,
see.
but I mean, it was nuts. It was really, really fun. The first time I ever played a punk rock show in Los Angeles, I got asked to play with an old Phoenix punk rock band, the Feeders, and they needed a bass player because their bass player had moved to Los Angeles. And I think they wanted me to join because back then I used to drive around in my mom's Chevy Love mini pickup, and they needed a ride to get to California to do some shows. So they asked me to play bass with them, and I thought it would be fun. And so I did. And the first show was at the Whiskey with the Dead Kennedys, and
Whoa.
the next night was up in San Francisco at the Mabuhay, and it was my 20th birthday the next night. So the night before, though, we played at the Whiskey, and I was just amazed. The Whiskey had a little upstairs area, and during the Dead Kennedys set, somewhat during the Feeder set, but during the Dead Kennedys set, people were running up the stairs and flowing over jumping off the balcony up there, doing into the
Oh,
crowd. It was like a human waterfall. It was just magical.
yeah. Yeah, I believe that can be, I just wanted to compare today's situation. I also went to some shows recently, and the
Mhm.
thing is, the crowd is rarely being like that nowadays. Most of us, including myself, be like, with our phones, want to record everything, as much as we can. And I don't like where it goes. You know what I mean? I think it was much healthier back then. But of course, I'm not really into, those potentially dangerous shows because I'm not sure if you heard there are a lot of guys from black metal kind of scene, and they're with, throwing animals all around and stuff. I'm not really like into that, but like, okay, some kind of normal mosh pit and everything. I also watch those kind of shows. But other people actually take care about each other.
Right.
They wanted to see if someone was hurt or something. It wasn't just like let's smash anyone's head like that. What do you think about that? How it's changed over the years? I mean,
Yeah. Well, it's just, I think there's a certain, age. When you're at a certain age, you're so filled with so much energy. I mean,
yeah,
it always used to amaze me, like to see what the audience would get to, how
exactly.
completely nuts it would get, but there was
Yeah,
something very, very, youthful about it, also kind of a male oriented sort of a thing. There was this almost athletic aspect to it,
yeah,
and I mean, it would get completely cuckoo sometimes, very,
yeah,
very, very nutty. But that was, I think, the idea of it. I think people were pushing the boundaries, and
Yeah,
occasionally they would go over those boundaries, and people would get hurt, pretty badly sometimes.
exactly.
And yet that was never the thrust of it for me. I did notice, I mean, there's something about dancing that is so freeing,
Yeah,
and there's something about live music. This is one of the things that absolutely was uh, you know, uh, a draw for me, what drew me into it was that aspect of the communal shared experience, with the audience and the artists and all being able to kind of lose yourself together. And it's something that we don't get to
yeah,
as people as much anymore. We're such a, a a specified sort of a creature these days, that we've
exactly.
named all the different parts of the land. We've drawn borders around everything, and
Yeah,
we call ourselves by our names, we've lost that animal aspect of ourselves somewhat. And there was certainly a an opportunity, occasionally to get to where you kind of lose yourself to this,
yeah.
dancing, churning sort of nuttiness. And I still find it very appealing to share a moment with people, and the music that's being made and whatnot. And so,
Yeah, yeah, I rarely can feel that nowadays. People, be like very disconnected from each other. And, especially on the concerts, like I rarely see, and feel like all the connection, between the artist and the audience, which is really sad thing, as you said, like we're all maybe, too self-aware lately. And, it's like it's going to get worse in the future, especially with all those AI technologies progressing and everything else, right? I
yeah.
don't think that the future, is promising, but you know,
Well, it will be what it will be. It's definitely, que sera, sera, as the song
yeah,
says,
yeah,
what will be. And I think that's what we're kind of talking about is the human condition,
yeah,
that our awareness of our mortality
yeah,
is, I think it's something that everybody has to go to. I can see my reflection here on the screen, and it's stunning to see that I'm turned into an old man, and it
yeah,
seems like we started the band yesterday to me, and I'm in my early 60s already, so I think
yeah,
there's something about that will be, on that underpins all of human activities, and whatever direction we happen to go in. I was hopeful, I thought things would kind of change for the better in a way when I was young. Maybe I was, naive, but they've kind of gotten a little worse. But there's things have gotten better in some ways and worse. When you I look here in this country,
yeah,
uh, you know, there's a lot more openness to personal privacies, people's sexual orientation, things like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
race, like the race problems that have always existed. I mean, it used to be horrible here. They used to,
yeah,
hang people here. Like lynchings used to take place. I mean, really
yeah,
terrible things. So some progress has been made, and yet there's still continue to be problems. But we're a very creative and innovative creature, the human animal. And I just can't imagine that in one way or another we won't figure our way, hopefully, to something. And no matter what, the planet will continue to be here. But
yeah,
you look at how long, say, sharks have been around, or the alligator. I mean, certain animals reach their evolutionary apex and that they've been around for millions of years. And will we last that long? And
yeah,
these are pretty big questions, but they're questions that have been kind of tossed around for ever in a lot of ways.
yeah.
But more so as the world got more modern. There was a certain period in the 70s where some movies came out that were dystopian, like Soylent Green, the movie Soylent Green, or the Omega Man, and there's stuff like that now, post-apocalyptic sort of, uh, you know, movies, and there's, people concern themselves with that. And these days, I mean, we're actually at the point where we could really significantly alter the planet negatively, in terms of life. There's so
Yeah.
many nuclear bombs. I mean, it's just
I mean,
incredible.
it's just like I have a feeling. I mean, it's probably going to be like that. Of course, we are going to destroy ourselves. Like, meanwhile, I don't think that animals would destroy us. Yeah, I even think a lot of animal species are highly intelligent. And they just know their order in nature. And we're just going to fuck up everything to say at least.
But the thing,
You
but the
know.
thing that, the part of it though, I mean, it kind of gets back to like what the band name means, meat puppets,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's a certain element to the name that even as conscious as we are and as intelligent as we are, we're still a part of nature as well. So
Exactly.
what
Yeah.
we're doing ultimately is what we were meant to do naturally. And we're serving a function, a mindless function, that nature wants us to serve, and I would hope that that function isn't to, radiate the planet, irradiate the planet with, a nuclear holocaust, certainly, but
Well,
it's a strange thing to see, to see, so many, animal species become endangered because of the behaviors of people, and it's that thing
yeah.
of the world getting better and yet getting worse. We've made so many strides in like medical breakthroughs and things, so there's not as many infectious diseases anymore, and so suddenly it's allowed for there to be a lot more people. It's incredible how many people there are on the planet now. In my lifetime, it's there's 8 billion people, and you wonder, will it reach a tipping point when it seems
Yeah.
like it's the possibility of it being such a much softer place, a much more loving and caring world.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I'm,
I think we are just happy, if we have people who take care of us and, just have our own peace of mind in all those crazy things that are happening around us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And tell me how hard, it was for you back then, because you played a lot of shows, in early days, and some of them weren't, paid enough or not at all. And how was it back then when you reflect on those early days for Meat Puppets? I mean, you still managed, to overcome all the obstacles and to, get back, let's say, I think you sound better than ever because, of course, your nature of your sound expanded over the years. And how was it like, when you remember, oh my God, like it was yesterday, like you said just recently? How does it feel like when you think of it right now?
Oh, it's neat. It's it was so fun. We were such a the reason we did it, we just decided it's because like what we're talking about. What is the point of us? What do you want to do with yourself? You find
Yeah,
yourself here, and we decided we'd, go ahead and play music and do it, with all our heart thrown into it, if you will, and it was fun. I mean, you change as a person. There's no stopping the aging process, so it's certainly not as physically fit as I once was, but music is the sort of thing that you can continue to do until,
yeah,
you die basically, or you can't keep doing it. And we were purposeful when we were young. It just seemed obvious to not paint ourselves into any one particular corner. We gave ourselves the opportunity purposely to be able to continue to grow, to
yeah,
just kind of have the music be the focus, and whatever we decided to direction to go in with the music. And because of that, we, still play and are still pushing back the boundaries of, what we're trying to get to. We're still finding new places to
exactly.
get to and still, enjoying ourselves doing it. So
Yeah. So that love, I believe, as you say, I mean, that love for music definitely helped you, go through all these years. Like no matter, and a lot of bad things happened. Yeah, I mean, I read a lot about it, but I wouldn't think about certain bands. I don't know, such as Grand Truck, Ammonia. For example, I like those bands so much, but would you believe me? A lot of people have no idea who am I talking about, like they never heard of them. And it is so sad because they were so great bands, you know. And what do you think? What makes a band stop just, give up on music or whatever? What does happen, you know?
Well, it's not an easy thing to do. I
Yeah,
think, life happens, to some
yeah,
people, there's a lot of easier ways of making a living, it dependent upon, you're dependent upon your livelihood, uh,
exactly. Yeah,
through people's, taste, do people like what you do? That determines whether or not, you eat and have a roof over your head, basically. So
yeah,
I think that some bands, they just kind of have said what they want to say, maybe, and a lot of times people just decide that they're going to move on and, change, do something else,
yeah,
and there's no getting around it. There's no getting around, like you say, some people have never heard of the stuff that you like, and you
yeah,
think about how like tastes change, and time just continues to move. It just keeps going on and on. And I look back at the different eras of music that have happened, like when like the big band era was happening, and all those musicians, what became all of them. And or like bebop, when bebop suddenly started to happen, and you had such incredible playing going on, and this really neat music being made, and then something else comes along and kind of happens, so different things, tastes change, the times change, and people get old and die, and
yeah,
like,
yeah. But
and
such a shame. Yeah, for example, about the Spotify, there are, I mean, not only Spotify, generally, I think a lot of social media ruins things for the artist. I mean, it's like a, double sword edge, I believe. Like as much as it is helpful, like there are so many great bands who are, I believe, working their ass off, but still they don't get enough attention, I believe, which is why I also created this channel, to promote my favorite bands and give chance to the bands who definitely deserve it, and to me it's really not important if the band has one follower, if the band doesn't have followers. If I like the band, I'm gonna just do the interview if they like it, you know what I mean.
right.
And how do you feel like about all those things, with social media fucking up things pretty much, because I believe that's also one of the reasons why artists give up. They don't have enough money, they have their regular jobs, and they have to choose between, music, this or that sometimes,
Yep. Yeah, it's
yeah,
definitely made it's changed things so much, like what happened, like punk rock was in response, in a way, to rock and roll having gotten so big, back then.
yeah,
Like there the popular bands seemed inaccessible, and you realized you could go to a record manufacturer, the actual
yeah,
records themselves, and get 7-inch records made. You could get a
yeah,
thousand records pressed,
yeah, yeah,
and then that's how music got out back then. There was only the radio, there was TV, the radio, and there wasn't anything like the internet or anything like social media. And it certainly has changed that a lot, and it's changed the way that musicians are able to make money. Some people it's
yeah,
helped, you see like some stars, somebody that's just putting themselves up on the internet, and the next thing they become, a new huge star, international star, because of it.
yeah,
But it's also, change, like something like what happened with just like punk rock, the way that happened. I
yeah,
don't see it being able to happen again. But it's just, it's a new media, and there's different constraints, and those it's the constraints, it's the chill, that like where the pressure starts to build up, once you
yeah,
squeeze, the pressure starts to build up, and then eventually the pressure breaks, and maybe some, whatever comes out the other side. It seems like there's the opportunity these days for some very innovative and different kind of things to happen, but it's up to the young people to do that, to come up with the interesting stuff. And it's all a little bit insular in a way. It's such a worldwide community now with the internet and with social media. It really is just this, like, look, here we are talking, now,
Wow.
and we're very far apart, and able to see each
Yeah.
other, so I in a lot of ways, it's like you said, it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
and there's that's just the way people are, though. It's a good idea, happens. Somebody comes up with something, and invariably it's weaponized, if you will.
Yeah.
Like something, but uh you see something like social media that could be so enlightening, and yet it also has such a dark side to it. Like over
Exactly.
here it's allowed, and I think the world over, it's allowed for people to share not only good ideas, but darker ideas, or more divisive ideas, and it's certainly, you know I don't do it that much. I purposely just don't do social media myself, and just
Yeah.
because just not my thing, but a lot of people do, and it's made it tough. It's made it. I think it would be really hard for a band to have the kind of experience that we had. I can't really imagine a band, doing what we did. It wouldn't happen. I
Yeah.
mean, like, you know, we made records back then,
Exactly. Yeah.
and people don't do that as much, and that was the big breakthrough, that you could actually make your own little records, and it was kind of neat in that way, so, but it's fun. I mean, it's an amazing innovation that has, its good and its bad points, just like, most things are.
Yeah, I think today people are also, I mean, a lot of them, not pointing out anyone, but I'm just saying they want to make things viral. They just, go for hits instead of, producing quality. I'm not saying about not pointing anything. I just want to say, and back then people had to work much more, to produce something of a good quality. I think it's a big, big difference. That's why we had a lot of quantity over quality kind of things lately. That's why I think that happens.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's a different kind of, the incentive is definitely different.
yeah,
The incentive is different, and I don't know if it was a question of like quality necessarily, but like you had to want to, like, at least, you know, get something made. Now it's pretty darn easy to just put something on, and I see the stuff
yeah,
that gets popular, and it makes for some pretty odd behavior. Like I see a lot of like little videos of people like trying to spit fire and lighting their face on fire.
yeah,
So it's like,
yeah.
that seems like a terrible idea. Well, you got a lot of people watching you hurt yourself really terribly, and maybe
It's
that was
like
the goal.
that. I think that culture of a shock value, it's going to be a mess. I think it's gonna be even more dangerous. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
But
Oh,
the thing though about anything, new technology comes along, and I'm sure, people had the same reaction going back to each, new innovation, TV, radio, the printed word, so a new technology comes along, and we have to figure out, how do we feel about this, how do we
exactly.
adapt to this, how does this affect me, as something new comes along, and what's it going to affect, how it'll affect the next generation. I think people will get used to it in some ways, and I'm still a bit of a, I'm still kind of naive, and I still like to focus on the positive aspects of it. There's plenty of that. Uh, there's still plenty of good to be found, and and still a lot of, good work that gets done. I hope, and if not, I'm going to continue to do what I do.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have a positive aspect to it, and to look at, things from a positive side, because otherwise it can lead to depression. At least it was in my case.
Oh, it's
So
very easy. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Depressing, you can definitely kind of bum out and you know, and I just getting back to again to the name of the band, there's something freeing in the concept and that, you know, I didn't ask to be, I didn't
exactly.
ask to be myself. I just happened to have been made.
Oh, cool. Love to hear that. I started recording, but if you want me to cut something, no problem.
All of Chris's bass playing is covered under the International Millennial Act for the EC. So I was reading this thing. Oh, there's
Hi.
Elmo. Reading
Oh,
this thing about
Elmo.
how fucking
Hi.
hard it is for bands to get into the UK anymore because of Brexit. That's crazy. Anyway, this is Elmo.
Hi,
He's going to
Elmo.
speak to you now.
Oh,
Oh
Derrick, don't
no, I don't
disappear
have
again.
anything to say, but I'll be here listening to Chris.
Oh, you are welcome to speak if you wish, of course.
Elmo, of course, plays guitar in the band as well. He's Kurt's son.
Yeah. I know.
Your audience will know him as Elmo Kirkwood.
Gross.
Okay, so whenever you start, I mean, it's recording anyway. So,
Go.
yeah. So we were just talking before with Chris about all that social media impact on, on people, and why bands who are really of a good quality don't get as much as attention as they deserve, and quality versus quantity. What can you say about that?
People have bad taste and they have limited resources. So
I
they only
agree.
buy what they've been told to buy in the media. And if you don't bend over for the media and provide them with the access that they demand of you, they won't vouch for you. And then the average person won't know that they're supposed to buy it. They won't buy it. They won't buy my music just because I tell them to. They need the man to tell them. And the man won't tell them about us because I won't share my access with the man.
Yeah. What do you say about that, Elmo?
There's no accounting for taste.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I'm going to be completely honest, I like to listen a lot of things. Like, yeah, sometimes I'm even ashamed of the things that I can listen to.
Call those guilty pleasures.
I'm only ashamed of the music I listen to. If I'm not ashamed by it, then I don't see why I'd give it my time. I think it's an exercise in humility.
The other reason a lot of people don't listen to our music is because it's not easy enough to get it for free.
Also, it's because your music doesn't 100% appeal to people who like popular music, because you guys are like
It's
80, 90 years old, something like that. All of the rest of them, except for me,
part of the
nowhere
reason
near 90 years old. Him, 87, Chris, 93, Kurt,
146.
147.
That's
tomorrow.
the problem. A lot of our fan base they're retired and they're now on a fixed income, so they don't have a lot of money to spend on streaming services and the like. A lot of our fans, they don't actually listen to music. They just like to come over to our house and steal our stuff.
And the young people that like it are the kind of young people that are limited in company and typically don't warrant enough social influence or clout to impose their taste upon others.
Also,
so what I'm trying to say is that the band has really limited appeal for a reason. It's awful.
We're white.
No.
We're white and straight and male, which means that we're canceled by 75% of the music listening audience.
I'm not canceled either. He is, as a proud white cis male, I don't condone Derrick's besmirching of our lot in life.
Honestly, I'm just gonna say that I get very angry at people, when I'm trying to talk about your band and people be like, I've never heard of it. I was like, don't you fucking kidding me? How is that possible? That's for real. And I always like the bands, like, for example, I don't know, Grand Truck, Ammonia, and it's like they are non-existent, and people be like, how can you listen to that? And I always like something that people people be like, what's that? Where did you find it? I was like, I really don't care how many followers does the band have. If I like them, I'm gonna like them. Like, I don't know.
Well,
you know
our music is a little challenging in that we have never. I mean, the closest people have been able to say about us is that we're
yeah,
cowpunk or whatever, but we
yeah,
play so many different styles
yeah,
that it's hard to market us. We actually,
exactly, yeah.
when we were trying to get signed by majors back in the 1980s, we had one guy say that we were impossible to sell. He couldn't figure out how to market us. So a lot of people, and our music is just too uncategorizable. So it only appeals to music heads, to people who are really into music, and that's actually not that huge of a uh, percentage of the music buying population.
Yeah, I
Take
just always,
classical music, for instance. I
yeah,
like to listen to classical music a lot, but I don't know anything about it. So all I do is put it on in the background. Whereas another person who knows a ton about classical music might listen to it for good reasons, whereas I just listen to it as like sonic wallpaper. But the people who
yeah.
like the meat puppets actually kind of understand music a little bit better and are more into it.
Well, honestly, speaking of my knowledge of technical music background, and I have no idea about that, but I really, really like the good sound. I really don't care about the genre as much as about how it sounds to me.
That's
And
why you like us.
yeah, and I think, yeah, I really also, I really hate when people say they want to define this or that. Like, fuck that. Like, are you enjoying it or not?
Yep.
Really, yeah.
Likewise.
They have to put a label on something, or same with like their sexual classification, this or that. Why do you have to put a label on
Yeah, I
everything?
don't understand that. It's odd.
Seriously,
People
like,
like to be, but I think as much as people feel like they don't want to be defined or boxed in, I think just as many people like to be told what they are, right?
yeah,
Seems like I think it's easier for people. There's no
Yeah.
critical thinking required.
The average person is just trying to find food and shelter, and they don't have time to think about it.
So they like a nice
exactly.
little label for what they like, whether it's music, art, or
Sexuality,
yeah, what they like to put their naughty parts on.
Yeah,
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 so that they
because
can get on with their foraging.
yeah, and other things like it's so much easier, than to try to understand someone. It's so much easier to say, "Oh, this is it," than to think of it. Like,
Right.
it's devastating. That's why I'm kind of trying to stick my small crew of friends and my music, and it's kind of a shelter for me. I believe, yeah. And
It's true.
tell me about other influences. For example, I've always loved some people, like some true, unfiltered geniuses, such as, I don't know, Jackie Lee Pierce, Sid Barrett, John Frusciante. And can you tell me more, because I do believe you will agree with me on this one. Like, what was so exceptional about that? Do you feel like they influenced your music, or influenced you in any way?
Well, I like an artist that we were talking about this today. Um,
Yeah,
some people play music for different reasons. Some people play music just to get out of their head or to like explore their own minds and their own selves. And other people play music because they like the sound of it.
yeah,
I always like artists who are using music to explore their lives. So you take somebody like Jerry Garcia or somebody like Frank Zappa, two very
yeah.
different types of artists. I know that y'all Eastern Europeans like that Frank Zappa,
We
apparently.
we do.
And
Oh, yeah.
he's pretty canceled these days too, but his music, even if you hate like half of it or more, it's fascinating to watch. And so like a guy like Zappa, I only bring him up because there's a lot of music of his that I hate to listen to because it sounds like shit to me, but there's so much of it that I love, and I just
Yeah,
basically love his exploration.
yeah,
And I love the fact that he's doing it. So I think a lot of the artists that I've always admired are people who it's obvious that they're doing it despite their, you take a guy like Sid Barrett, somebody who's going to do the art and not worry about whether or not it's correct or if it's going to hurt them or not. Or a guy like Chris here, who's what I like to call a lifer. He has never been able to do anything but fiddle around on this thing. And all he does is just play these 4 strings, and these 4 strings are Chris's life. And that's what appeals to me about artists, is when they're out of their gourds for what they do.
Yeah, it's just like I'm gonna do it, like no matter if anyone gonna like me, like I'm just doing my own thing. That's what I like. And have you ever had a chance to meet Jeffrey Lee Pierce? Maybe I think
Jeffrey Lee Pierce.
Yeah.
I used to read his writing in Slash magazine in the late 70s, back before he was in the Gun Club.
Yeah.
Chris, you ever hang out with Jeffrey Lee Pierce?
Back in the day.
Yeah, I think his music was, but when I got into the Gun Club, actually, I was reading about Mark from Screaming Trees. I think he recently, kind of year ago or something, passed away. And he was talking about his influences. And I was like, I saw the Gun Club. I was like, okay, let's explore it. And I was like, whoa, what was that? It wasn't just punk, it had also many elements that
A lot of roots rock. Do you
Yeah.
like The Fall?
Well, so. Let's say.
That's another band where there's a ton of stuff that I like, that I don't like by them, and a ton of stuff I do, but I love them in concept because they're so fucking crazy. Another band I really like is Kraftwerk.
Oh, they're really, really interesting. Yeah, a lot of crazy elements going on there, I must say. So if you like them or not, like I didn't meet people who are in between. Speaking of
What's interesting about making music also is, Chris and I have been playing off and on since 1980. And part of what it takes to stick together and make music is to never lose sight of that, what you're trying to go for, despite the thing, everything that life throws in your way to try to stop you from doing it. Money, friendship, disagreements, health problems, and that's the same thing with Kraftwerk, who those guys did not get along. And the 2 guys that they hired eventually had to leave, and then eventually the 2 guys stopped hanging out together. Now there's just one guy. And one of the reasons we called the band Meat Puppets, not the only reason, but one of the reasons, was because we had noted that it's kind of a calling. Like when we started playing together, there was like this element in the room that we hadn't foreseen. And it was almost as if the music was playing us, which is a really trite thing to say. But in general, if you're channeling the art, it becomes your guiding principle, and you're just like hanging on by your fingernails, trying to do right by it, and not let life get in the way, which is weird.
Yeah, I also feel like, there is a lot of pressure sometimes, from the fans as well. And they be like, they think they can be in charge sometimes, of what you have to make, how you have to sound like. And
I like you.
Kind of,
you understand.
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
You're just like in the middle, you're going to struggle. Like, if I'm going to please someone, but I'm always for like, fuck it, I'm going to do it. If you like it, cool. If you don't like it, cool again. We're not going to argue about this,
We didn't have too much of that problem because we have changed so much over the years. Like we started playing this really speedy kind of pseudo hardcore psychedelic music. And then we immediately turned around and played like the slowest country shit that we could play. And that blew a lot of people's minds. And then we turned around and played something else. So we never really had too much trouble with audience expectations. And yet, as much as we have tried to throw curveballs to our audience, they still manage to get it wrong and piss us off over and over again by not understanding what it is that we actually do. And since I've let that cat out of the bag, I'm going to let Chris continue.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, if you wish, you can add something to it, or I also wanted to ask, so you can decide.
Oh, well, you know, I think art, what appeals to me about art, I like is the art itself. I think it's
Yeah,
a worthwhile endeavor. I think that once people, figured out they got, I mean, if you look back all the way back when art first started to get made, like
yeah,
30,000, 35,000 years ago, you look at the cave art in Lascaux and in other caves, scattered around Europe primarily, but there's some in South America as well. You just see like there's the wall of hands down in South America, where people found the need to say, I was here. They put their hand on the wall and then spray, spit paint at it,
yeah,
and then those that urge to express oneself, conceptually, through art, is just a very appealing thing to me. And it just, now there's all this technology, there's certain kinds of instruments that are used now, there's electricity, things that didn't used to exist, but boy, do I like the art that has happened. One of my favorite things about like music, some of my favorite musics are like indigenous music that is
yeah.
made, by
I
people.
like flute. I like flute so much. That's why, and really, they have beautiful melodies. Yeah,
Yeah, and just, and wherever you find people, you'll find some of them are going to be making some particular kind of noise or some particular kind of visual arts, and a lot of what we're talking about is how the art gets out to other people, how it gets sold,
yeah,
but I think the making of art is a very personal experience. I
exactly.
read a book a few years ago called Sistine Secrets, as in the Sistine Chapel, and it's all about how Michelangelo was basically forced to do the painting of the Sistine Chapel ceiling, because primarily he liked to do sculpture, but his patron, who I think was one of the Pope Leos, insisted that he do this painting. So since he had to do it, because this guy was, the guy that allowed him to eat basically by, funding his artwork, he painted all these secret little things into the Sistine Chapel that were about him being unhappy about having to do it. So, and it's a really neat book, and it says a lot about like the the relationship between the artist and his audience, if you will, the audience being the person that enables the artist to continue to make the art by funding his work, So, and it was a very fun book, but it spoke to that relationship between the artist and the art buyer, the art, the the people that, you know, fund the art making, if you will.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about your albums. Probably Derek would kill me, but maybe not. But I'm just gonna say, I usually like, first albums, but in your case, surprisingly, I like more albums such as Monsters, Too High to Die. I know it's all like, yeah, like, more like mainstream kind of a sound, but honestly, I actually like the sound progress and included more elements to it just because of that. And also, I was thinking like one of my favorite songs ever that's always on repeat is, Roof with a Hole. When I
Yeah.
heard that song, it was like, oh my God, this is a masterpiece. And to me, it's such an underrated song, a lot of bluesy elements. And I like that, climax at the end of the song where it's speeding up the things up. I think I was so obsessed at one time. I thought my friends were gonna start throwing things at me if they hear that song one more time. And what do you think about that? How do you feel when you reflect on those earlier things and when you compare it to the newer ones, the set list?
Oh, I I I love it. I mean, I love that, you're able to enjoy the different things. People
Yeah,
fixate on one particular record. You know,
yeah,
we do the work that we want to do, and
exactly.
then people react to it however they react to it. That's a beautiful song. It's a great one.
Yeah,
Kurt wrote that, my brother wrote that, and to see him dipping into kind of a bluesy feel, I mean,
yeah,
it's not easy as a songwriter to find new ground, and it's
exactly.
tempting to, fall back on cliches, and he's just managed to find a way through so many different feels, different feelings, and to express himself. And that one in particular has such a nice, that actually has a bluesy kind of a feel,
Yeah,
and he didn't do that a whole lot, but it was like, wow, a very, very cool song, and it's the topic, the lyrics and everything. So, I mean, I'm very, I'm a huge, huge fan of Kurt, of my brother. I think he's
me
I
too.
yeah,
Yeah,
and such a such a broad palette, what I mean? He's just able to go in so many different directions,
yeah,
and say so many different things so well, and he never, without ever getting very specific, without ever saying, I'm saying this specifically, and that's what makes, good art. It allows the listener or the viewer or whatever, particular art kind of, medium that you're using, to interpret the art itself by themselves, to have a feel without being too specific about what it's trying to say. It means something to you specifically,
yeah,
means something different to somebody else without, you know, getting too specific. And in that, it's what's allowed us to continue to play for so long. We purposely, like I talked about earlier, set it up so that we wouldn't limit ourselves to anything other than only what we wanted to do, regardless of what people thought of it.
yeah. That's the spirit. That's what I liked about you. Precisely that's why you're one of my favorite bands forever. And yeah, speaking
Thank
of
you.
that sound progress, you're welcome through the ages. I've noticed that you included a lot more elements and instruments to it. So if you can elaborate this, I think the new audience would maybe appreciate to hear more about that.
Well, we always kind of, I mean, we were a three piece when we started, right? So it was
Yeah,
just bass, drums, and guitar initially, but we always had, other instruments around. If you're going to be a musician, there's going to be other stuff around. There was always keyboards around,
yeah,
and we would put those on the earlier records. Um, we put on like some real simple keyboard playing. There, like on Mirage, on the record Mirage, there's some different sounds that are mostly done through a guitar synthesizer. The
yeah,
Roland came out with the guitar synthesizer that, it actually had a MIDI chord on it that allowed for the guitar to trigger synthetic sounds. So that there's like some horn sounds on a few things and some other kind of keyboardy sounds, synthetic sounds that are done. So we always kind of, we would do whatever we wanted to. We'd put stuff on as we wanted. Um, like Roof of the Hole has organ on it, but that's not us. That's hey, Derrick. Derrick. Who played what's his name? Tom
Who played what's his name?
organ on
Tom Stoppard,
Roof
the
of
artist.
Hole? No,
What?
Roof of the Hole.
Tom.
What was his name? The producer, the Memphis guy.
Guy who used to work with the big star.
I'll tell you in a
Here,
second.
let me Google that for you.
So that,
okay,
that's he's passed away recently, but that was it's a Memphis. I just then his name is, I'm getting old, but he'll find that in the
I
meantime.
will tell you.
yeah,
So and occasionally we'd play with bands that would have other instrumentalists, and we'd do a few songs with them, when you're touring, sometimes somebody will come up, let's do this song, and we'd have piano and stuff. But a few years ago, about 10, 12 years ago, I met a guy in Philadelphia one night, him and his brother, and they just came up and introduced themselves, which happens, you meet people. And then I saw him the next night in New York and realized they were catching a few East Coast shows. And his name was Ron Stavinsky. And then I saw him again, maybe the next tour or something, and he gave me a CD and of himself playing. And I realized, and he's a keyboard player, and his CD was incredibly good. And I always thought it'd be fun to play with, just so he took it upon himself to reach out to me one time when he was in the western part of the US. He was in New Mexico, and he said he could make it over to Phoenix if I wanted to play some. So I said, sure, come on over. And he did. And then he met my brother and whatnot and everything. And it just kind of led to, so now we have Ron has been playing with us for a while. And he's a guy that was like a child prodigy. He's only ever played keyboards. They noticed as a very young child that he had a gift for it, and it's all he's ever done. And he's been playing with us now for a few years, and then before that happened, even though we incorporated Elmo, Kurt's son, into the band.
Yeah, it was about 2011, I think, right?
Something like that. Yeah, it's been a while now, and it was interesting. He was never pushed in the direction of being a musician, but he was born, he and his sister, he has a twin sister, Catherine, and they were born when we all, into the band, basically. So he's always been around it, but he's his own guitar player. And
he was naturally surrounded by all the musical family, and I think he totally was into that. It kind of came naturally, maybe. What do you think?
Well, he got into it himself, and he's he's a hell of a good guitar player. It's incredible because I don't know where he got it from. He got it, but he made himself into a very, very good guitar player. And we started playing with us. We never practiced or anything, and there's just something about the family sound that he fit in really, really well with. We didn't have to practice or anything. He just started doing it. So, and then Ron is such a good keyboard player. So it's just neat, in a way to flesh it out a little bit and have, a little bit more, just more noise going on.
Yeah. How did you feel when it was that day of the reunion, when you were inducted into the, Hall of Fame in Arizona? How did it feel like, Before that, I believe you and Derrick reconnected, right? And
right.
All of you generally. And what was this feeling like when you were present there, on the scene back then?
Well, it was actually the Rock and Roll or the Arizona Entertainment Hall of Fame that got us reconnected with Derrick, and we hadn't talked to him in years, because of the way things had gone on, and we decided they wanted us to play for the Hall of Fame thing, and we decided to get together the night before to see, if we could, if Derrick could still play or anything, and it was incredible. It was just me and Kurt and Derrick, and it was like stepping into a time machine. Honestly, it was just wild to have just be the three of us and to hear that sound and that feeling, and it's so obvious why it was just the three of us that made the band when we were so much younger, and that was it was a wonderful thing. It was great to have him back, and now, he's a different kind of a guy. Now he's still the same guy completely, but I think he enjoys it more. I think it's a little easier on him now in some ways. He actually kind of, I don't know, he's just a fun, a more open-minded drummer in a lot of ways than he used to be.
Yeah, I think it comes with ages, probably. Like it's not all that bad, that we're getting older, like we're getting wiser and experienced. A lot of great things going on, I believe. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, he's just a conceptualist, right? Like when,
Yeah.
coming out of the 1970s, drumming was so bombastic, it was so big, and there were so many amazing drummers, that had so much insane technique, and it's such a physical thing to do, play the drums,
Yeah.
that, and he just wasn't about that at all. He was way more of a conceptualist. He taught himself to play open-handed. He plays the hi-hat with his left hand and the snare with his right. Most drummers cross their hands and do it like that.
Skills.
He does it
Yeah.
like that.
Great.
And and he never really, cared. It just wasn't his thing. It wasn't about like, that physical aspect of drumming. And I mean, he could haul ass and we could play as crazy as we wanted to and as fast, and he's always had perfect meter. But he's just a little more open-minded. He's into not, I don't, he was never closed-minded, but there's just certain things that he likes now that he didn't like as much back then. He's not he's not as much of a hipster.
Yeah. And tell me about the plans, for Meat Puppets in the future. Do you have in mind something like touring, like, any soon? Are you planning to visit my country possibly? I mean, I'm hoping for that, or anything close.
I hope so. I hope so. We went on tour last year, and that just COVID changed everything a lot.
Yeah, you
It really
postponed
got in
your
the way.
tour. Yeah, it was postponed, and then you had it last year. How was it like?
It was really, really good, but then everybody got sick at the very end of it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it just, and that wound up having to cancel a bunch of more stuff again because of it. So right now we're hoping that things we'll get back on the road soon. That's all I can say. We don't have
Yeah.
anything planned immediately. Derrick and I still live in Phoenix, and so does Elmo. Kurt lives in Texas. Ron lives in Pennsylvania, so we don't all live in the same,
Yeah. So you just
city.
gather occasionally and jam probably, right?
Derrick and I get
Yeah.
together every week. We get together every weekend. This is Derrick's house,
Yeah, yeah.
and
Cool.
we just get together like we did when we were kids and play in his living room. But the only difference is that his mom's not here.
Whose mom's not here?
Yours.
My mom is
Derrick,
here. She's
So
Derrick,
who is it, Tom?
I have no idea. I can't
would
remember.
you wish
I
to
can't
say
remember.
something? Would you
So
wish
what
to
now?
say would you wish to say something for the end?
Well, we
Yeah.
get together on Sundays and play music. As you can see, there's my drum kit over there.
Oh, like that.
I'm starting to Jones to play some music, and I think we're gonna probably let you go. And
That's what she's saying. He has anything for the end.
as far
I'm
as the
sad.
end goes, I look forward to seeing this. It's been great meeting you. I'm delighted to two hands across the ocean because we don't get to talk to folks from your part of the world too often. It's very cool. And I'll be honest with you, I could do I'd like to interview you and find out what your life is like, because I know what my life is like.
Oh my God. That's amazing. You're really gonna make me cry. I'm sad that I have to go. I mean, we can prolong this interview or we can have it soon again if you wish, because I'm very sad that I have to go. I could talk to you for hours, but then you will
How about
also,
this?
yeah.
You give us some gigs, we'll come out and play in your hometown and we could talk then.
Well, I would like to arrange that, but no one gives a fuck about me. Believe me or not, I'm not
True.
in charge for anything,
Yeah,
sadly.
we're not currently out touring either.
Here's the thing, though. You found the Meat Puppets. You're the kind of person that actually found the Meat Puppets, and that says a lot, right?
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
just it's something that the
Puppethood has power.
yeah,
All right, listen, we're gonna let you go. I gotta get these
It was really nice
these
chatting with
fingers
you.
warmed up.
With you too. I'm really glad that.
And
Yeah.
let's hope that this recorded.
I'm really, really glad I had fun with you and that you wanted to talk to me. And I'm really, really happy. I'm probably going to cry later because I'm so happy because I'm also that kind of a crying bitch, you know, and probably will bother my friends about you for days. But I don't know. Thank you so much. And, contact me anytime. You have a friend here and you're always welcome here. That's I wanted to
Thank
say.
you so much.
Frank.
Yeah.
It's great talking with you. Great meeting you, and keep up all
Yeah.
the great stuff.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Let us
Thank
know
you.
when this comes out and we can help publicize it.
Oh, yes, I think I will edit it soon and probably tonight, later in the evening. So I will definitely notify you. Don't worry.
You got my email address.
I do.
All
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I know. I know. I hope my audience will know that. And if not, I mean, we will inform them. So not a bad thing. Yeah. So
I just informed them. You don't have to do that.
yeah. Okay, then that's good. You did my job. That's great.